Hey everybody, the death lineup here. The Warriors beat the Memphis Grizzlies in a tighter one than I wanted specifically. But Brian is here with me, and after our quick little intro here, we're not going to talk that much about the Warriors game because we want to get to our interview with Sabreena Merchant, who is back. She joined us a couple months ago, and we talked pre-draft stuff and just Valkyrie stuff and women's basketball. And she's back post the Warriors selecting you stay. Now, Bri, give me the last name again.
We think Yochite.
Yochite. So I think that's going to be one where we're going to hear lots of different pronunciations. But see, the thing is when she's here, she can just tell us and doing her local media stuff. And I guess there's the one that was sent around was a YouTube video of her when she was 15.
That's the one I had looked at before we talked about it like weeks ago. That was like, so yeah. When you sent that, I was like, oh, I've seen this.
Yeah, so she has. We believe that that's her, but she says her name so fast. Veronica. She even puts the middle name, right? It was like
Mm-hmm.
Veronica was the middle name. She used the middle name too. But Valkyries drafted her first. They drafted Cheyenne Sellers second, and then Caitlin Chen was the third pick. We'll talk about all of that stuff with Sabreena.
And just really quick, and when we talked to Sabreena, I mentioned a Zena Kata tweet because Zena's really good with like when it comes to like pronunciation, and I think she's the one who kind of clocked the Kiki Iriafen thing before
Yes.
anyone did.
We all were saying Iriafen.
Iriafen, yeah. So Zena said it's pronounced Yuste Veronica Yo Chite. So yeah, I said it right. Like yo instead of like any type of J in the last name, it's like yo. And
Mm-hmm.
then chi, like a cheetah, chi, and then tay, like Taylor. Yo chite.
So we'll talk about all of that stuff here in a second when we throw it to the interview that we did. But let's talk about the Warriors because this is the Death Lineup podcast. The Warriors won 121 to 116. I think more important than actually them getting the win is the fact that, like, should Memphis have even really been in this game? Is like was my biggest takeaway coming out of it. I just thought the Warriors should have won this game probably by 15 points, especially when Ja went down with the ankle injury. Like, whatever it is that causes them to, kind of allow teams to come back into the game, which is like a historic thing for these last couple of years. Like, I thought maybe with Jimmy and with his ability to sort of read the situation and understand how to slow the game down and get the hard twos, it's still that, they were up 20 and then they were down 5, and I'm just thinking like, okay, like this team is such a fraud. But then they come back and they win, and Steph scores the last 10 points. Like, what was your major takeaway after the game was over?
I kind of feel like this is like a kind of like a Kerr experience than one that I'm used to in the sense of these past couple games. The last game of the regular season was definitely like play-in game part one is what it felt like. Like they were treating it like it was a playoff game or a play-in game, and then this one is just like we've been hanging out. We've this Moses and Pajemski thing. It's been our best lineup since we got Jimmy, and I say it on this podcast, or at least I pull it up before we do this podcast every time. I pull up the lineups, whether
Mm-hmm.
I get to it or not. It's always their starting lineup as their best plus and highest logged minutes. And I just find it so interesting how he's just still like, oh, Moody didn't hustle against the Clippers. Yanked. He's not going to. And then Pajemski admittedly had not a great performance in Memphis. And
he was pretty bad.
it's
Yeah.
pretty bad. And yanked. And I'm just like, I just don't see that strategy or just how he's done it. Like, I just don't see that working. If we want to have long-term playoff success, it's because like I understand it, but when those younger players that you have a shorter leash with happen to be some of our best players, then I think that could become an issue down the line.
Okay, but you know what it tells me is it tells me that Steve and his coaching staff believe in 3 players.
Yeah.
If you have Draymond, Jimmy, and Steph on the court, The other two guys are just matchup based or how hot they are. If Moody's making threes or even shooting them, he didn't even really shoot them yesterday. Or if Pods is making threes, then you kind of deal with the other parts of their game maybe that aren't fantastic. But when they're not shooting well, then you see them try all these different experiments to find that right fit. And what is that in this game? It was like we saw a lot of GP2. So much GP2. And there were moments where it worked out. There were moments where, he's kind of open for a reason. But if we're seeing a lot of GP2, what it tells me is that Pajemski, Buddy, Moody, they're not scoring. Because if they're scoring, you're still going to see some GP2, but it might be a little bit less. But the elephant in the room is no Kuminga for the second game in a row. Like zero Kuminga.
The second game in a row that they could have probably used him to. Where there's just so many points in this offense where you're like, you said GP2 open for a reason. How many guys that play a lot actually are open for a reason when, at least Kuminga is like, we don't want him in this mid-range to the closer to the basket. Like we're trying to keep him on the perimeter, but like Draymond open for a reason. GP2 open for a reason. Jimmy at points from the 3-point line. It's
they dared Jimmy to shoot, right? Like that was their game plan. But I do wonder that because Draymond was talking about how they sort of figured that Edey was going to be the one guarding Jimmy. I do wonder if it's Jaren Jackson instead, and maybe not the whole game, but maybe just in spurts. And I know he makes dumb fouls, so that's why you don't do it. But if you have Jaren Jackson, who's way more athletic than Edey, I think it kind of forces Jimmy out of attack mode in some of those instances. So not saying that it would have been necessarily smart to always have him, but I would have maybe maneuvered it a couple times just to give Jimmy a different look. Because once he saw Edey on him, he was like, okay, I see exactly what this is. And I'm going to have two options every time I touch the ball. One, I'm going to be able to launch because he's not going to come out on me far enough. And two, I'm going to be able to go right into his body, and that's going to create stuff for other people, or I might just be able to score. I mean, he even didn't he do the too small sign on Edey at one point? So, I think this is going to be the entire postseason, right? The Kerr haters are going to be the Kerr haters because this is going to happen. It's like, okay, in the first quarter, is Pods hitting his three? No. Well, we may see a lot of Buddy. And if Buddy's not hitting his three, oh man, are we going to see some Guy Santos like we did, which we did? We saw some Guy Santos over Kuminga, by the way. And I don't think anybody, maybe other than Steve Kerr, would play Guy Santos over Jonathan Kuminga. And this is coming from, the two members of the Guy Santos fan club. But we both know that JK is way more talented and can hurt the other team, whereas Guy is more about keeping loose balls alive. And it's going to be one of those postseasons where the people who hate Steve are going to keep hating Steve.
Yeah,
especially if the buttons that he's pushing
don't work.
And I don't understand alienating JK right before the postseason starts, knowing that Houston is a possibility and he's going to have to play in Houston.
Yeah, I wonder if there's some behind the scenes stuff. Like it sounds like they've both Draymond and Kerr have referenced like some type of like attitude, but I mean, you don't want to lose him potentially before this Rocket series. It's a team who he has played well against this entire season, maybe except for like one game. But do you want to get into the Rocket series at all since you're not going to be here this weekend? Should we just
so we'll probably have to do our we'll do something next week. I think they play
Sunday.
What is
right?
it? It's Sunday and then Wednesday. So maybe we'll try and get back on Thursday and recap both of those games. But yeah, we saw Houston at the end of the season, and the Warriors that was not a comfortable basketball game for them. And it's not like they were trying to win that game. And Houston was just like, no, we're just the fresher team. So if you're a Warriors fan, that is your kind of your worst nightmare, just that Houston is so much more fresh as a team than you are. And if but on the flip side, you're kind of hoping that Houston's never done this before. and the guys with the most vet experience are kind of the hotheads like Dylan Brooks, who, he's been in big games, but his teams have never won those games. So Fred VanVleet, you're kind of the reason why you have him is for this moment because he has been a champion, including hurting the Warriors in 2019. But yeah, now it's like how does Fred and and company kind of grow this team up in quick fashion? That's and if you're a Warriors fan, you're kind of hoping that the Warriors' guile and savviness actually matters. But at the same time, if this thing goes 6 or 7, that's rough sledding because the Warriors, they need less mileage on their legs to get to some of these teams because the West is such a beast.
Yeah, man. I mean, I feel like I keep thinking about this Houston series in a similar light as that Sacramento Kings series. I get it's two completely different teams. Sacramento had like the greatest offensive rating of all time that year, and Houston's definitely more of a defensive oriented team, based off of Ime and of course the talent that they have, some of those switchable wings. But I can't help but just relate the idea that young team, young hungry team, athletic, just wants to, knock off the Warriors, like Sacramento, and then Houston as well, where it feels like we've had Houston's number, and then they finally maybe got us in the play-in. They're not playing that in-season tournament game, and then the most recent one. I just keep thinking that they could push this to, just being young and athletic and having energy, just pushing it to like 6 or 7, just like the Kings did. And then I don't know how fresh everyone's memory is about that King series, but it gets pushed to 7, and the Warriors had an opportunity to win it in 6, and they kind of just, I don't know, they looked a little exhausted that game, and they didn't win it in 6. And while as the Lakers, they took care of business against Memphis in 6, so they had a couple extra days leading up to that series where had the Warriors got it done in 6, I actually think the Warriors take game 1 at home against the Lakers, which felt like a pretty big game. The Lakers were able to steal one, similar to how the Warriors like to steal away games. So I'm just worried that, this is, I think the Warriors are a better team than the Houston Rockets, actually. And I'm just worried that a similar thing can happen where they're just so young and athletic, and they take you to a longer series, and then that impacts your chances for the next series that also could be against the Los Angeles Lakers again, who get the Minnesota Timberwolves instead of Memphis. But Memphis was pretty not injured that 2 years ago, and whereas Minnesota looks like they're maybe not.
Yeah, so I'm out of town this weekend. I'll be in Las Vegas covering WrestleMania for the Wrestling Observer, but I'm going to, on WrestleMania Sunday, I'm going to have my iPad, and I will. There's a good chance I'm paying way more attention to Warriors basketball than I am to actual WrestleMania, but that's how important this podcast is to me, and just the Warriors in general. But and then so yeah, we'll try and be back next week. Probably Thursday time frame after game 2, and we can give our thoughts. And then I think they go, what is it? It's Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, Monday. So those are the first 4 games. It's going to be a big one. I don't know. We may have to go to the Chase Center and sit in Thrive City for one of these games. That might be fun.
We'll see.
Okay, so we're going to throw to the interview that we did with Sabreena Merchant from The Athletic. I give her credit right at the beginning because she called the Yuste Yochite pick, not necessarily for the Warriors. She actually had her going 1 pick ahead, but she's been on it. So it's cool for us, I think, as a new podcast or new folks covering the WNBA women's basketball to have her, because she's just like one of the best. And so the fact that she comes on with us is a highlight for me. So let's throw it to our interview that we did with Sabreena Merchant from The Athletic. We are welcoming back a return guest, Sabreena Merchant from The Athletic. And I'm going to immediately put you over because Brian was at Thrive City. He was at the Chase Center. They were having a party for the draft, and he predicted that if the Valkyries drafted who we thought they were going to draft, that a lot of the fans would not know who that was. A lot of the media, from what we have seen as well, And the reason is because they did not read your mock draft, which had you stay. Bri, you gonna do the last name here?
Is it Yochite? I
Yosinte.
think Yochite. I know
You know,
Xena put it
there
on our
has
Twitter with the
there is some
pronunciation. Xena's always
disagreement,
great.
you know?
Yeah.
Ohema had Yosite in the press conference, but I think Xena, like the video she posted of the athlete herself, said Yoshite, so we're still in, some disagreement here.
Yeah,
But
I feel like Xena's got the like the enunciation down for that stuff. So I think
Yeah,
she said Yochite. And I thought that's what I
Yoshite,
heard
that's what
her
we'll go
say
with.
too. I think that's what what Kathy said as well. Come on, Ohema. Let's see.
okay, but like if they'd read your mock draft, you actually
Mhm.
had her going the pick before, they would have known who she was, and there wouldn't have been all of this like who is this? Who is this? We're like we're waiting for the pick and we're going like, "Oh, we absolutely know who they're going to draft now because you wrote about it." So you get major kudos on that one. You called it you didn't call the pick exactly, but you called the person who would be available. So kudos on that, and I felt so much smarter than a lot of these other people just because I read your mock draft.
Well, thank you. I'm glad it helped. I feel like I should get, like, half credit for that pick because I said, "If she is available, Golden State will take her."
Exactly.
I just didn't think she'd be available, so
The just the idea of her as the top pick. We talked about it the last time you were on, like how much of
Mhm,
this is marketing for this new team, which is why I thought, if Kiki was going to be there, they would have probably grabbed her because she was a local talent in college and,
mhm.
and well known. But this is kind of the opposite where you're really going for the younger player with the tremendous upside versus the local marketing aspect. I saw that she had a jersey that was retweeted. I don't know if that was a real jersey and a number with the number 4, but
Mm.
is she coming next year or this year? Is she going to play for this team? Like, have we heard anything about that yet?
I think the understanding is, they drafted her expecting her to be a part of the Golden State Valkyries in the inaugural season, and whether that means that she comes over at the start of the year or comes over after the completion of Eurobasket is kind of an open question, but I I'm expecting her to play for the Valkyries in 2025 at some point. I don't know if that's going to be for a full, 44 game situation. Obviously not for a full 44 game situation, but whether it's full season or back half of the season is still, I think, a little up in the air.
So I think I have a I have a lot of questions. I don't even know where to necessarily start, but
Sure.
I think we haven't really known, I guess, the direction of this team. All they've had was an expansion draft as well as a free agency. And I remember a quote from Natalie Nakase where she was like, "Oh, in this expansion draft, we wanted players who were gonna shoot threes, play defense, and like we want to be a transition team." I feel like I remember that quote somewhere. And now we've had an actual
Mhm.
draft. And now I'm wondering, do you feel like we're better informed to kind of understand the direction of this team and like sense of like roster building of like what they're looking for? Or do you feel like it's still kind of we're not entirely sure? I guess I wanted to get your opinion on that because drafting Ustay and Cheyenne, kind of these bigger wing size players with guard skills, kind of I feel like isn't. I don't know if they drafted anyone like that in the expansion draft. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah, I think the expansion draft really filled in a lot of complementary players for the Valkyries. You think about like the Stephanie Talbots and Jechi Zandolicini and Temi Fag types, right? Who are all good role players who can fill in as like 3 and D wings or rim running bigs in Temi's case. And you get like a better sense of who's actually going to be handling the ball now with their draft picks and like how they filled out free agency, with the Tiffany Hayes acquisition, making sure that Carla Late's going to come over. So I think it still fits in like the general. We're going to space the floor. We want like tall, athletic wings who can shoot the ball. Like that very much is what Shy Seller is. Shy Sellers is. That's what Yusei Ochite is. Caitlin Chen, I don't know if she kind of fits in that mold. She's also a third round pick, so it's hard to say, if she's going to end up making the roster. But I think the ethos that Natalie laid out after the expansion draft still fits. They just have, more pieces that play into that puzzle now, as opposed to they were kind of missing some of the big ones before the start of free agency, at least.
The pick when it happened, I had people reach out to me who were, following very early and maybe not the biggest WNBA fans. And
Hmm.
they said, I don't know who this is. But then when you get into the second round, I think if anybody watched college basketball, they know who Cheyenne Sellers is.
Hmm.
What was the reason for her falling? Because early on, she was definitely mocked in the first round. So to see her fall to the second, I saw some stuff about knee injury, and she was struggling there late in the season. Was that the main reason, or was there something else going on?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely just an injury situation from the executives who I spoke to. They were just concerned. Like, I think she injured it twice over the course of this season, and like just that right knee. During her senior year, she still had a pretty productive season for what it's worth. Like, shot 40% from 3-point range, led a very good Maryland team, to the Sweet 16, and they probably would have been in contention for a Big Ten title and potentially further if like Bree McDaniel hadn't gotten hurt over the course of the regular season. So uh, I was surprised by how far she fell, especially like some of the players who were taken above her with just like less pedigree, less upside. There must have been like the thing is, how much time do they actually have to get into her medicals? Like you have 2 weeks to talk to this player between when her season ends and when the draft is. So uh, something must have really hit a red flag. And Golden State was at the point where at was it pick 17 where you just have to take the potential and like the fact that she is already such a good player and just sort of throw caution in the wind regarding the injury history. But yeah, that's the only thing I can think of because I realize positionally she's like kind of a tricky fit because she played a lot of lead guard at Maryland, but she kind of projects as a wing in the W. But to me, that's just like she has so many skills. We don't know what to do with her, but that's like a good problem to have because she can do so many things. I was pretty stunned that she fell out of the first round.
Have you heard anything additional about the knee? Because I remember when they were doing like the Lilies All-Star game and she was on the roster and then
Mhm.
she backed out and I think she said something like, I'm gonna rehab my knee. Does that do we think that she's gonna be available for camp, or maybe she'll have to rest a little bit to continue to rehab that knee? Or maybe she said that because that game might have not been like too serving for her if she played it regardless.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like the players who were in the All-Star game, and Madison Scott is probably the one who was selected the highest at number 14 in the WMA draft. So clearly like a good showcase for talent.
Mm.
Cheyenne Sillers wouldn't have been like taking herself down at all by playing in this particular competition. So I'm inclined to believe that if she stepped out, like probably just wasn't feeling at her best, but I haven't heard anything that's suggesting that she's planning on, redshirting this season or whatever. I mean, financially speaking, it probably would behoove her to, if she thinks she's not feeling up to par, to just sit out this year and then sign her rookie contract at the start of 2026, where you get the higher rookie scale, presumably with a new collective bargaining agreement. But I haven't looked into it super deep, but I haven't heard anything to the effect that like she isn't going to be ready to play.
The third pick was I thought it was a really cool pick, by the way. And the Bay Area, large Asian American population. We got
Mhm.
to see Jeremy Lin before he became Jeremy Lin. He actually got his start on the Warriors, and we saw
Mhm.
how the fan base really put their arms around him. And I thought, if she can actually make the team, I think she'll be really popular with the fans. But we've also seen when it comes to the WNBA draft where the first rounders, they're kind of penciled in, but second and third rounders maybe not so much. With this current roster, with the Valkyries roster being so new and in building, does she have a legitimate shot at making the squad? Do you think?
I'm not gonna like say that she has no shot at making the roster because that just feels rude for somebody who won a national championship and was very good for UConn and obviously had this fantastic moment at the draft. I thought it was very funny that she was saying that like she needed to go to the bathroom and Caroline Ducharme kept telling her like, no, you should stay out here, and she didn't really know why. And then obviously she ends up getting picked, and it's this massively entertaining moment. Golden State signed a lot of people to training camp contracts, like, and there are a lot of people here who I think have a good shot of making the final roster. Just like quick perusal ahead of time, I already see 11 people who I would be shocked if they cut, and that's like before we get to Yochite. So I would be surprised if Caitlin Chen ends up making the final roster. I do think she's probably going to be on the training camp, crew for the entirety of those 2 weeks, and the kind of player where they'll tell her to like stick around. We might need you on a hardship contract, especially when hint hint Eurobasket comes and all of our roster is in Europe. So that's kind of how I see her season going. I'd be pretty surprised if she ended up making the opening night roster. Just there's already enough guards kind of with similar skill sets that would, I think, slot in ahead of her on the depth chart. And again, like I said, they just went like on a shopping spree during the offseason. Like there's so many people who have already been signed to training camp contracts, and most of them have more professional experience than Caitlin Chen.
It sounds like my audio is a little buggy, so I'm trying to fix that. But I think it's funny that when I see like the Instagram comments and Twitter comments, like Chen's our most popular draft pick by far. like everyone seems to be raving about her. So it's gonna be
surprising.
It's gonna be.
Well, I mean, she was on the team that won the championship. So if you did watch any of the tournament, you did see her play, which is probably part of it as well.
And she was
good.
Like
great
performances great.
In the
Yeah,
tournament.
I feel like she's a really good like hustle player from what I was watching. Just knows how to make the right play, and kind of similar to you kept seeing it on Twitter where it's like, oh, she got drafted out of the audience, just like her new teammate Kate Martin, and both of those players kind of being good but getting a lot of their popularity from the star that was on their team. So I guess going back to the roster, on the Valkyries website, I see 18. There's an obvious omission of 2 players who you mentioned on your article in Ileana Rupert and Maria. How do you pronounce that last name? Conde?
Conde.
And you had kind of insinuated that they're not going to be on the team this year. And I saw that Maria got injured. Is there a status on Ileana of why she wouldn't be on the team?
So they just haven't agreed to a contract with her yet. My understanding is that if she comes, it's only going to be after Eurobasket. So maybe they'll keep some salary space for her, or they'll just sign someone with the understanding that like, hey, we're going to cut you when Illy comes over in June or July. But as far as I know, Rupert will not be with the team before that competition. So it'll just be a second half of the season if she shows up.
That makes sense. I feel like it would make sense for most of these players to just stay with their team, considering Eurobasket is pretty soon after the season starts, right? It's like a month after.
Right. And the French national team demands more of a commitment from their players, like in terms of how long they need to be practicing with the team prior to international competitions. So that definitely would make it challenging for Rupert in particular.
Do you think Carla's going to have to go for? I mean, I know she was on the qualifying roster, but she didn't really get run until they absolutely qualified. She was only getting like, she started to play once they were like for sure in, and then Gabby Williams wasn't playing, and then Marine Johannes wasn't playing. And so would she be on that roster, you think?
Yeah, Carla's a different situation. I don't think that she has the same the French don't prioritize her in the same way as they do Ileana Rupert. So I think she'll probably be able to come over right away. That's what I've interpreted from all of Golden State's comments about her.
My one of my friends who is a big fan of yours, he wanted me to ask you a question going back to the draft, and I guess the ESPN person, is it Vopel? Is that the Vopel? Gave the Valkyries a C- draft grade, but very much admitted that it was kind of just some sort of, we don't really know about the roster and how they want to play and how they want to coach. So it's more of an incomplete grade rather than a down on the thing kind of. But so his question was more along the lines of, taking a swing for the international player because of the untapped potential. Like if you're a first year franchise, is that how, with the internationalness of the WNBA increasing, like, is that kind of the mentality, is take the shot now because you can, essentially, and if you're back in the draft lottery next year, great, because there's going to be tons of talent. Like, is that part of the process, do you think?
I honestly think that the Golden State Brain Trust took Yochite because they thought she was the best player available. Like, whether that means that she'll, take a few years to pan out into that, because again, she is only 19 and the
Yeah,
youngest
she's
player in
very
the
young.
WNBA last year was 22. So, like, she's not the only one. Like, Aisha Sifka, Dominique Malanga, both 19-year-olds who were drafted in the first round as well, both of whom I think are expected to come over this season. So, I don't think they were really like the Golden State front office was concerned about, who's gonna be somebody that people know, or, like who's gonna be marketable, I guess, in this particular perspective. But they just like her as a basketball player, and it comes as no surprise considering how many international players they've already signed to their roster, right? Like they're very comfortable with this talent pool. They feel like they've done their due diligence in terms of evaluating them and knowing how they're going to fit together. And Chite, like she's got an incredibly impressive international pedigree, right? Like she led, I think, Lithuania to a gold medal in the U18 championship. And like I forgive me, I couldn't name a single other Lithuanian player in the women's basketball world. So I must be something pretty special about her if she was able to, win a European championship with a country that isn't necessarily considered a women's basketball powerhouse when you consider like all the talent that's coming out of Spain and France and like, other countries around Europe. So Belgium, right? Um, I think they just like her, and I would expect her to come over right away. I mean, she's been playing pro since she was 14 years old, right? Like even though she's young, she clearly is familiar with this level of competition. I think the W is way better than the French league. So it's going to take her a little bit of time, but like you said, the Valkyries are in this great situation where if it works out immediately, great. They look like geniuses, and like they obviously believed in her talent. And if it doesn't, you're back in the lottery in 2026, which is probably, in my opinion, what you should be doing anyway, just to sort of build a young talent base to begin with.
And you can have the patience for that reason as
Right.
well. Like she may not
I
be
mean,
the best rookie this year,
mm,
but as
yeah.
she progresses and gets better, then by the time she's good, maybe your team is also good. But I'm going to age myself here, and I'll let Brian get to his next question. But the Golden State Warriors historically drafted the very first, as far as I know, Lithuanian player in the on the men's side by the name of Sharunas Maršalonis, who
Mm.
played for the Don Nelson run TMC Warriors in the late 80s. So I do wonder if there's a little connection there with kind of the history of the Warriors bringing Sharunas over and then also drafting uh, her as well. I think that would be kind of like a cool. I haven't heard anyone say that yet, but I think that would be a cool little connection there for the fans to if Sharunas comes out here, and that would be really cool.
That is really cool. I used to play NBA Hang Time with my brother growing up. I think we got that game in like 1996 or something. And yeah, Marcelona is definitely one of the players on that roster for Golden State.
Uh, so I just saw that you dropped the 2026 early mock draft. It doesn't include international players. You said it's just the college.
Mhm.
The Valkyries are probably going to be a top 3 pick if I had to guess. Um, do you think it's like a better kind of, I don't know, lottery or overall draft in this one, or is there about the same? Or
So
yeah,
there's no Page in the 2026 draft, at least not domestically, right? Like there's no Page, there's no Caitlin, there's nobody who we're going to look at and be convinced that she's the number one pick wire to wire, at the start of the cycle and when, Kathy Engelbert steps up to the podium in 2026. But I do think that there is a lot of depth of like role player talent or, potential occasional all-star talent in this draft. Uh, I once again think like internationals are going to factor very heavily into this draft. There is a Spanish prospect, Awa Fam, who is unbelievable and probably my number one pick if I were to like, make a commitment at this point. So you can bet Golden State and all of the front offices have
yeah,
their eyes on
exactly.
her immediately. But it's just,
She's a Valkyrie.
personally, like it's really hard for me to have the bandwidth to evaluate international prospects and domestic prospects all at the same time, especially while the college season is going. So I try to just stick with what I know and put out who I think are the best college prospects at this point because I feel versed enough, to make these kind of declarations. And, by the time we get to draft season in 2026, I'll have a better understanding of who the internationals are. But at this point, I just don't. I only know Awa because I've watched her in international competition before. But yeah, I think the 2026 draft is going to be another example of hey, there's a lot of great international players, and to me, like college players have just been getting older, right? Like for whatever reason, they just find ways to stay in college longer and longer. And so the gap between their ages and the international players is just increasingly stark, right? And if you can identify a player and get her rights and watch her develop, like there's just an advantage to that the WNBA teams haven't been exploiting for a very long time. And now with, increased budgets to travel and scout and like really have the opportunity to look into these players in a way that they haven't been able to with like the resources that they just didn't have in previous seasons in the WNBA. I do think that teams are going to take a greater look at like not just the stars internationally, but like the players who can just contribute to your team, like a normal role player, like a Julie Van Loo. And I do imagine that we're going to get a lot more of those, even with the prioritization rule, because the W is becoming a more attractive property. The salaries are going to raise. People are going to want like the competition of the league is obviously already incredible, but it's a more attractive place to play now because the experience is more professionalized. Like you're with people who have actually watched you play and aren't just like picking you out of a lineup of like, watching your stats in like League One of France. So I do think that you asked me a question about the draft and I've gone in several different directions, but international players are going to factor more and more, not just for Golden State, but throughout the WNBA, I think, as we keep moving forward.
One of the players on that list was AZ Fudd, and we were thinking during the tournament if she was going to come out or not. And obviously she decided to stay, but she had a fantastic tournament. And, just the idea that, she's got this tie to Steph, that would have been a kind of a cool situation. But had she actually entered, where do you think she would have landed coming out of the tournament that she had?
My guess is she wouldn't have fallen past Washington. She's kind of a local product DC girl. I think Virginia, actually, I could be wrong there, but she was just so excellent during the Final Four, right? Like most outstanding player of the Final Four. And you like, I hate to use the term the eye test because it just kind of makes it seem like they're not actually good, but they just look good. But she totally passes the eye test, right? Like you look at her and like that is a hooper, right? And I'm sure like Under Armour, based in Maryland, would have loved to have her on the Washington Mystics for a local tie there. But yeah, I think personally, like I probably would have had her around like 6 to Washington. Like I think that would have been her floor after the tournament that she had.
We finished in the athletic tournament bracket that you guys put together. Brian talked us out of UConn, and we picked South Carolina. But if he didn't talk us out of UConn, we would have had the entire Final Four plus the championship. We would have got it all right. I think we would. I think we would have been in like the top 20 because I sensed just looking at brackets, a lot of people had that Final Four. But yeah, so we were. If we had just picked UConn, I don't know, we might have got some love in some way. But yeah, we picked South Carolina. All right, Brian, you can ask the next one.
It was so obviously UConn after like the second round too,
Right.
and
Yeah.
to pick that before, it was just so sad.
I felt very silly
Um,
too for having just avoided the obvious, but here we are.
um, so you did your mock drafts for this draft, but if you had done say like a big board where you're not really worrying about team fit and just doing the best prospects, I wonder where would you stay or Cheyenne have kind of been, and what would the range have been for those players? And say if you did a big board.
Yeah, so I did a big board of like again the American prospects right after the 2024 NCAA tournament. This is going to take me a second actually because I don't have it handy, but Shy was definitely on the list. I'm trying to remember where I had her though. Probably like in the teens, I want to say. No, that's the 2025 list. Um, hang on. This is you can cut this out. I'm gonna pull it up real quick. Um, okay, if I go through my doc here,
And you said right after the tournament, this tournament or last tournament?
last tournament. So
Okay.
every year I try to put out like a big board right after the tournament, just to like get everyone thinking about the next draft, right? And then
Mhm.
maybe switch it up by the time the college season. Honestly, like not a lot has changed by the time the college season starts. So I usually just wait until the lottery, and by then we just go into mock drafts because like now we actually have
Yeah.
a draft order. Um,
Yep.
but Cheyenne Sellers on my initial big board was 19th. So I was a little bit lower on her than she ended
Mm.
up going. Yeah, said she needed to improve her scoring efficiency, which, if you look at her stats this season, shot 40% on threes and nearly 50% on twos. So I think she did that. Yeah. So good for Shy.
um, I apologize if my audio. It sounds like my audio is absolutely terrible. I'm sorry, but so when I feel like I watch Cheyenne, I guess later in the year towards conference tournament or March Madness, I felt like she was a little slower, and I'm wondering if that had been the case the whole time. Maybe she just operates at a slower pace, or if you felt like the knee was kind of showing more, the injury to the knee was showing more towards the end. Because I'm assuming you've been watching Sellers since she was a freshman, whereas I just started watching her this season.
Right.
And I was kind of like, oh, she's looking like a little slower towards the end here. And I'm wondering if that was a knee thing or if I just hadn't been paying attention to the speed. And that's kind of normally how she operates at that speed.
No, I think her speed is actually like one of her greatest assets. So for her to look slow was definitely a result of her, I think, being a little hobbled. She had the major injury. I mean, I'm going to say major. She only missed like a week, but on Martin Luther King Day. And I think after that was when you could sort of notice like her just mobility was a little bit limited afterwards. Had a couple of, you know, unfortunate performances immediately after that Martin Luther King Day game.
Was that the Ohio State game,
That was one against
or was that a
Texas,
different one?
actually, when they just got
Oh, okay.
wrecked. So not only did Cheyenne get
Yeah,
hurt, but their point guard, Bree McDaniel, also suffered a torn ACL in that game. So
I
she
remember that
ended up
one.
missing the
Hmm.
rest of the season. So no, I think, uh, I mean, I wouldn't say that like she's not capable of changing pace in the half court, but her looking slow is not how I would describe peak Cheyenne Sellers. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
As we get to the end of this, and thank you again for all of your time. I love The Athletic. I think I've mentioned that. The podcast got a recent branding and name change, no off season, which tells me that there is a strategy to kind of just do more and keep doing, women's basketball, college and pro.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, the in the Bay Area, the Warriors have a terrific lineup of reporters covering the Warriors. Now, I don't imagine that the Valkyries are automatically going to get, all of this attention early on as the Athletic kind of sort of figures out their strategy. But like, how do you sense that are we going to be able to see um very frequent content about the Valkyries as we dig into the fandom? I haven't even looked because we have some pretty good local papers too. The San Francisco
Mhm.
Chronicle covers all of the teams like in depth. I haven't seen
Right.
what their plan is, but do you know yet like how this upcoming season, if it's going to be any different in the coverage, or are maybe some of the Warriors reporters will kind of lean into some of the content as well?
So yeah, just to lean into your local reporter for a second, there were only two reporters around the country who traveled to every game with their WNBA teams last year, and that was Annie Costable with the Chicago Sun-Times and Kareem Copeland with the Washington Post, and two teams that didn't end up even making the playoffs, which is kind of a bummer. Uh, this year, I think we're gonna have four, because Marissa and Jemmy from the San Francisco Chronicle is going to be traveling covering the Valkyries. So that's just awesome for an expansion team that you're going to have that 44 games coverage come in for you. And she's excellent, just absolutely excellent. So that's pretty cool. I think Indiana and New York are also going to have traveling beat writers this year for their teams, which Indiana like probably needed to happen.
They
We'll
might
see
need
if
more than
Dallas
one.
we'll see if Dallas also makes the move there. But as far as at the Athletic, we are blessed with excellent writers in the Bay Area. Marcus Thompson among them. He has already been helping us with Valkyries stuff. In terms of the expansion draft and free agency stuff. He's very plugged in with the Golden State Brain Trust, so that's been a wonderful asset for us. And I know he's going to be there at opening night against the Sparks. Hopefully, I can make it out there too. But in the event that I can't, at least Marcus will be representing. So um, and then like our podcast host, Zena Kata, is based in the Bay Area too. So I'm sure she's going to be around the Valkyries as well, helping us get some local flavor for that content. As far as like how much we cover individual teams over the course of the season, like there's definitely interest in how an expansion team comes to be and like what this process is going to look like in year one, especially then we'll be able to compare it down the line to Toronto and Portland and team 16, whoever that ends up being in a couple of years. So I think relative to, how much we covered, let's say like, I don't know, like the Dallas Wings last year, there's definitely gonna be more interest in the Golden State Valkyries than like the average WNBA team. But some of it's also just gonna be based on like how much they're winning, right? Because that's kind of what drives interest from the casual sports fan. So we'll see. I think there's a lot of interest in the process and like definitely this international flavor that the Valkyries have adopted that is very different in terms of team building than what other teams have adopted. So, pay attention to the podcast. There's some stuff in the works, and we will have, I think more behind the scenes stuff in terms of their coverage than like actual games. But, if they start winning, then I mean, we'll be there. Like we like the good teams, that's for sure.
Yeah, we need some no off-season meet and greets. That's what we need. We need for us who are plugged into you guys, because I think you guys do an awesome job. Like again, going back to your mock draft, going like, why does no one know this when we know this? And it's like, oh, it's because Sabreena's on her game. But yeah, like we enjoy it, we support it. I listen to just about every episode, and I know Brian does
Well,
too.
thank you so
So
much. Yeah.
appreciate you. And I imagine a lot of the people who listen to this also have athletics subs. But if you don't have a sub to the Athletic, it is a fantastic bargain for supporting sports journalism, which is part of it and a big deal for me. So I want to thank you again for coming back. We didn't scare you off the first time. That was I was very happy when Brian let me know that you would come back with us. So it means I guess it kind of means we did an okay job the first time. But yeah, go
Sure.
Sabreena's
For the invite.
all no off season, all the work on the Athletic. It's great. I'm so jazzed for the upcoming WNBA season because I know that we're gonna have so much to talk about and so much to read up on. So for Brian and Sabreena, I am Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.